Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vance Coasters International, featuring today's coaster, Valravn at Cedar Point. Valravn is the tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster in America and is located at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. I actually received the opportunity to operate this coaster for the 2020 season, and Valravn is in fact the first coaster I ever operated. Valravn is one of the most well-known rides at Cedar Point and is in fact one of the most controversial roller coasters between coaster enthusiasts and the general public, or GP. It's also perhaps the single most divisive coaster in the world in terms of enjoyment. Hopefully this video will give you a good insider's perspective from a real operator, as there is an entire story to be told about this ride. Valravn is a dive coaster, which means that riders will be hung over the edge of the vertical drop for a few seconds before being sent through the ride. This ride was built by Swiss manufacturer Bolliger and Mabillard. Bolliger and Mabillard.
Yo, what's up, Jack? So I noticed that you're trying to pronounce B&M, so the full pronunciation is technically Bolliger and Mabillard. Wait, no. Bolliger and Mabillard?
Bowling Ball and Magazine.
Bugler and Mabillard?
Bada bing, bada boom.
Bolliger and T-Mobile?
Bioengineering and Molecular Biology.
No, wait, no. Boogly and Moogly? Dude, I don't know. It's such a weird name. It's called B&M.
B&M. You could just call it B&M for short. Cedar Point decided to hire B&M to design and build them a dive coaster to open for their 2016 season. Valravn was built at that time to be the tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster in the world, previously held by Diving Coaster at Happy Valley Shanghai in China. Think that's not very creative? How about a roller coaster just named Roller Coaster? Believe it or not, there are 340 roller coasters that are just named Roller Coaster. And that makes roller coaster the most popular name for roller coasters in the world. But anyways, Valravn has also qualified for 7 more world records when it opened, but these ones are definitely a stretch. Valravn's layout starts with the train climbing the lift hill, and then it droops, floops, swoops, and stoops. And then you droop and floop and twoop and whoop and stoop. Now here's where the extremely divisive opinions come in. Dive coasters are known for being one-trick ponies, and if that one trick doesn't absolutely amaze you, then the ride could be considered pretty boring. While most members of the GP, again that's the general public, would be terrified hanging so high off the ground, many enthusiasts are unimpressed with only the first drop and require the entire ride to be interesting. Alright, now I'm going to demonstrate just how divisive Valravn actually is to those who have ridden it. I have invited a GP member to talk about how they liked the ride. After him, I'm featuring an enthusiast who made a video review of Valravn that maybe wasn't so fond of it. First up is Kyan, a GP member and a Valravn enjoyer.
So I really enjoyed the Valravn. I think the best part of it was definitely, the memorable drop at the first drop. I ride the Valravn typically every time I go. I would give the Valravn from a 1 to 10, probably an 8.5. I would say it's a pretty good investment. It's definitely a groundbreaking roller coaster compared to some of the other ones. Aside from all of that, I think the Valravn has a lot of upsides to it. That drop that I said before, it's definitely something you won't find at pretty much any other park that I know of, at least. It does it twice, I believe. One's lower down, obviously, but that's definitely a really cool feature. That's another thing. The Valravn is super smooth, which I like a lot.
Next up is Alpengeist Fan 08, an enthusiast that made a much less favorable video review of the ride.
Hello, welcome to Alpengeist Fan 08. Today, I'll be reviewing my first kiddie coaster, Valravn at Cedar Point. This drop sucks. Let me just say, this coaster isn't fun at all. This ride has 0 force. It is easily the most forceless thrill coaster I've ever ridden. This ride is about as forceful as sitting in a parked car. These inversions are just pathetic. Valravn, on the other hand, has about as much airtime as being in a straitjacket. Valravn is just so boring. It makes you want to fall asleep. For my personal score, Valravn gets a 1.3 out of 10. This is my second least favorite thrill coaster I've ridden, and it is truly awful.
So as you can tell, there are definitely some disagreements there, but that doesn't mean that Valravn isn't popular, and here's my proof. According to a ride operator that worked Valravn in its opening year of 2016, here is the path that the line took on its busiest days. Eight hours. It took 8 hours in its opening year. I traced this path using Google Earth, and the line for this coaster was 4,000 feet long. That's over 3/4 of a mile. In fact, that's 600 feet longer than the actual track for the coaster itself. There are, however, much more interesting parts about the ride. B&M dive coasters are among the most technologically advanced rides in the industry. For starters, Dive Coaster Track is one of the widest in the world at around 6.5 feet wide. This means that if an average height American male were to stand on the track, he would get hit by the train. For this reason, I do not advise that anyone stands on any roller coaster track. Dive coasters also have among the heaviest trains on any coaster and are an estimated 27,000 to 30,000 pounds, so you would get kablammed out of existence. You know what else is the same weight as one train on Valravn? A T-Rex. And if you have just 6 trains, it would weigh about the same as the Space Shuttle Endeavour. If you double that to 12 trains, it would weigh the same as Yo Mama. All of this weight is held up by a total of 36 wheels on each train. These wheels take a long time before you can use them on trains. They actually feature use after date instead of a use before date, as the curing process for these wheels takes a long time and they will sit on a shelf for years before they're used. The weight of these trains has a few other side effects. First, it puts a lot of stress on a small spot of the track, so elements on dive coasters by nature have to be drawn out and typically not as intense. Second, the trains can't have floors due to the extra weight, so there's a temporary floor that rises out of the platform so that guests can load the train. Third, there are 2 sets of anti-rollback racks on the track instead of just 1 like most steel coasters, and each train has a total of 8 anti-rollback dogs despite only having 3 rows. If you don't know what anti-rollbacks are, it is a safety system put in place on the vast majority of roller coasters with lift hills in order to prevent the train from coming back down the way it came. It's basically a giant ratchet, and if the train were to reverse direction for any reason, the entire train would be held up by the anti-rollback dogs, which is why so many of them are needed to distribute the weight. And finally, if you look at the train's side, you will notice something that you can never unsee. The second row of the train is not perfectly in the middle. I know, this is real, and I'm sure it's driving some of you crazy right now. I believe they did this because the train is so heavy that the motor on the drop can't support the weight of 3 entire rows of the train, so the third row was extended backwards so that it can sit on top of the track above the drop, while the first 2 rows actually get to hang over the edge. The drop is controlled by a motor that advances the train forward and slows down the train at the very top of the drop. It only slows you down and does not ever fully stop the train, believe it or not. The drop motor was not designed to actually hold the position of the train, and this is actually a good thing. If the drop motor was able to completely stop trains, in the event of a power outage for the ride, the train may be able to become stuck hanging over the edge. Obviously, this would be a bad thing, because not only would everyone freak out, it would also be impossible to evacuate everyone from the ride if it couldn't get power back. If power does go out or the ride e-stops as the train crests the drop, the motor simply will not engage and the train will drop off the lift without being hung over the edge. We call this a dumpster dive, but don't worry, it's extremely uncommon and perfectly safe. It's also worth noting that the drop motor is unable to bring trains back up, and once they're sent past the last break, you are definitely going to be sent through the drop. Since heavy coaster trains require very bulky track, unsurprisingly the track also has to be very heavy to compensate. The heaviest piece of track for Valravn weighs 17,000 pounds, which is heavier than over 40 ham sandwiches. Not only that, but the entire coaster weighs almost exactly 3 million pounds. That is heavier than over 100 ham sandwiches. There's another reason that the track is so remarkably heavy. Almost all of the track's rails are actually filled with sand. That's right, some coaster track is actually filled with sand. This sand reduces the amount of noise that coasters make and is particularly necessary on B&M coasters since the shape of the track basically amplifies the noise it makes. A YouTube channel named Art of Engineering made a very interesting and comprehensive video about this process. His video is linked below if you're interested. The distinct noise that sand tries to eliminate is nicknamed B&M roar and is very common among older B&M coasters. I would know because the entrance to Valravn is right next to the Cobra Roll for Raptor, a B&M inverted coaster built in 1994. So sometimes when I was working at the entrance and a guest would have a question for me, it would go like this.
Hi, excuse me for a second. I'm looking for a sit-down restaurant. Do you know where I could find any by any chance? Okay, so there's a restaurant called Melt. They have really good grilled cheese sandwiches. On the main midway you can get there. Also there's a restaurant, what was that? Hugo, it's an Italian restaurant just to your left. I still can't hear you. Okay, finally. Okay, so Hugo's is an Italian restaurant just to your left. Are you kidding me?
So this sand helps to keep the ride nice and quiet. It really does make a huge difference. There is, however, one part of the track other than the lift hill, brake run, and station that does not have any sand in it. I will actually let you guess which part of the coaster has hollow rails. In fact, if you, the viewer, get the answer correct, I will give you $10,000 on February 30th. Your choices are A. The top of the first inversion, B. The first turn out of the station, C. The top half of the main drop, or D. The entire second drop. You have 30 seconds to lock in your answer. Once you have your answer, comment it below. And while you're at it, it would help me out a bunch if you subscribe, like the video, and hit the notification bell so that you find out when I upload. Thanks. And pause the video if you need more time. And the correct answer is B. The rails of the first turn out of the station do not have any sand in them. If you stand next to the track by the exit of the ride, you can hear a difference in how the track sounds. Plus, I've hit all the rails with my hand as an experiment on a nightly track walk, and it just makes a ping sound. All the other track just sounds like you're slapping a rock. But all of this track would be almost worthless without an advanced system to safely send trains around the layout. In fact, the platform of the ride is the most technically advanced area of the whole coaster. The entire operation of Valravn is carefully controlled by a large computer. This computer is kept in a climate-controlled environment below the station, so it's basically a large room that's carefully air-conditioned. This computer controls almost every part of the ride, from the moving floors to the lift and drop motors, to the brakes, to the drive tires, you get it. While the ride ops are trained to safely load passengers and dispatch trains, the computer's safety system is there to basically double check, triple check, quadruple check. Well, let's just say there's a lot of extra checking it does. It's super overkill, but that's a good thing. For example, when a ride op is done checking their seats, they walk back to their safe zone, the area where they're clear of moving trains. On many rides, this is just a designated area on the platform, but Valravn safe zones have pressure pads that detect when weight is on them. If it helps, they function pretty much exactly the same as Minecraft pressure plates. The computer system waits for all pressure pads to be occupied before it will be able to send the train. And while that's not really necessary, it guarantees that everyone is where they're supposed to be before they send the train, making it safer. This presence feature can also be done with the use of buttons, like on the main control panel. The operator in the control booth has to hold down 2 buttons, one for each hand, in order to send the train. And this does marginally improve safety, but we weren't huge fans of this one. The main problem with this feature is that you have to hold down both buttons all the way until the next train parks. Not only is that annoying, but sometimes park managers will try to call the built-in ride phone in the control booth, and we won't be able to answer the call for what feels like an eternity. In fact, let me show you how long it takes to answer the phone sometimes.
All clear.
That happened all the time. Also, don't wave to the controls operator at Valravn when you're being dispatched, because we can't wave back, so we just have to get a smile and nod. There are several more safety systems put in place, such as the seats, which will not allow the train to leave the station until all of the restraints are low enough to be buckled. If they are too far open to be buckled, the computer will show the seat as gray on the platform screen. Once it's pushed down far enough, it'll turn green on the screen and allow the train to be dispatched. Okay, here's another cool one I bet you didn't know. On both sides of the platform there are light curtains, which shoot invisible beams of light across the floor in front of the train. If anything gets in between these light curtains, the light beams are broken and it sends a signal to the ride computer to stop the train, which is good because if someone were to somehow fall into the well when the train is moving and get run over, it would have a negative impact on their overall health. That is pretty much impossible though anyways, since the air gates have to be closed on both sides of the platform in order to descend the train. This, like almost everything else on the ride, also creates some more problems. Sometimes a guest will decide they don't want to ride with something at the last second and they'll throw something off of the train onto the platform, breaking the light curtains. This, of course, makes the computer panic and stop the ride immediately. This happened when I was working at Valravn last season when a guest threw their rainbow Crocs to the side of the platform while the train was moving. Not only did this stop the train, but since the train had to stop so fast, something went wrong. The computer threw a fit, and the ride immediately went down for maintenance. So then everyone was just kind of hanging halfway out of the station until the maintenance team showed up and was able to send the train and fix the problem. So don't throw your stuff off of moving trains. In fact, here's a list of things not to do on Valravn that actually did happen while I worked there. Don't slam dunk your screaming and crying child into a seat and buckle it for them. They will not let the kid ride. Don't keep all of your loose articles, including an entire paperback book, under your pants and accidentally show everyone your crusty tighty-whities full of holes when you're digging all of your belongings out of your pants and shoving them in a bin. You're acting like I didn't see these. Don't cut in line and somehow manage to get arrested after a not-so-calm discussion about it with security. Don't run away from bugs and fall down the stairs. And finally, if a ride-op asks you to take off your sunglasses before the ride, don't throw a temper tantrum, cuss them out, and then get kicked off of the ride. You should, however, remain seated facing forward with your head back and shoulders against the seat back at all times. Please hold on to the ride comes to complete while stopping. Do not extend your legs while the ride is in motion. Today on Valravn, we're going to take you up 223 feet and drop you back down 214, speed is 75 miles an hour. But first, we're going to hang you over the edge for just a few seconds while you stare at your 90-degree free fall. If that sounds like fun, let me hear you guys make some noise. Sounds awesome, because you guys are. And that means we're kicking you on out of here. There goes the floor. You're out of the door. Enjoy your drop from the top of Valravn. That's going to do it for the first ever episode of Vance Coasters International. This took a long time to write, research, record, and edit, so if you enjoyed this episode, it would help me out a bunch if you hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment of what you thought of the first episode so that I can keep making more videos like this. In fact, if this video is popular enough, I'll make a second episode featuring one of the most famous coasters in the world.
At the turn of the millennium, there were signs. Was there something out there? A higher intelligence? A mysterious force at work? Beyond words? Beyond comprehension? Beyond. What will the new millennium bring? M theory. A shadowy construct fathomed by scientists at their wits' end over the quest for the answer to everything. Beyond time. Beyond space. Beyond gravity. Beyond dimensions we understand. A natural force simply known as Millennium Force. Somewhere, racing along the edge of the time-space continuum in the universe as we know it. Giga Coaster.
This has been Vance Coasters International. Thanks for watching.